So, do you consider yourself a Christian? If I were to just ask you sort of out of the blue, do you consider yourself a Christian? And your reaction might be one sort of shock. Well, of course I do. Why would I be here if I did not consider myself a Christian? But it occurs to me, long before I ever committed my own life to Christ, long before that cold evening in February when I was baptized into Christ, long before I was serious about being a follower of Jesus, if you had asked me, do you consider yourself to be Christian? I probably would have said yes. Even though I had a lot of doubts, even though I had no connection whatsoever to a church family in any semblance at all. And if I was going to school at a university and the university asked you to put a religious preference on some sort of document, I probably would have checked, I am Christian. So maybe I should ask a different question, maybe a little more specific in nature. Maybe I should say or ask, do you belong to Jesus? Do you belong to Him? Are you a part of Him and consequently He is a part of you? In the book of Galatians chapter 3, verses 26 through 29, Paul says this: "So in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. Therefore, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female, for you're all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise." That's a better question, isn't it? So you can say with confidence, I belong to Jesus. I belong to Him. And furthermore, you could also say with confidence, I am a child of God. So if that's the case, if you are a part of Him, if you belong to Him, if you really are a child of God, well then how well do you really know Him? How well do you really know Jesus, of whom you are an intimate part of? And your reaction would say, well, I know He was born of the Virgin. I know that His birth was miraculous. That's certainly a good thing. And I'm confident that He died for my sins, and I'm equally confident that on the third day He was raised from the dead. Well, that's really good. I think all the above, those are all good, solid conclusions. But perhaps we should take it still a step further. Do you really believe in Him? Using the term belief in the sense, are you entrusting your entire life to Him in total faith? And do you believe that He came to earth as God in the flesh? That Jesus was completely and fully God, but Jesus is also completely and fully human as well. In the prologue to John's gospel, I'm just going to look at that just a little bit later, he identifies Jesus as being the one who comes in the flesh. In John chapter 12, verses 44 through 46, this statement, "Then Jesus cried out, 'Whoever believes in me does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. I have come into the world as a light so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness.'" Powerful words, not physical darkness, but complete spiritual darkness. Allow me to pause just for a moment. I'm just going to put on the brakes just for a couple of minutes. Beginning January the 1st, I'm going to undertake a 6-month sermon series focusing on the Gospel of John. The primary theme being believe in me. That term believe is used in some form 84 times in the Gospel of John. I'm sort of going off the deep end because I've never done a sermon series that was 6 months long. Probably going to stretch our attention spans to some degree, but John's Gospel is so rich, and there's so much there, and there's so many different ways I firmly believe we can benefit spiritually. I think it's going to be a great 6 months from January of 23, Lord willing, to June of 23. So I plan to use the month of December to get us ready for that experience in John, to experience John's gospel. So the title of this short series, just the 4 Sundays in December, is Emmanuel, God with us. When it was announced to Joseph that Mary was going to be with child, the whole birth announcement of Jesus is told from the perspective of Joseph in Matthew's gospel. So in Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, it said, "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel," which means God with us, a direct fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. So this idea of God being in the flesh, he is with us. He is a part of us in the most intimate way possible. Isn't it true that this time of year, so much of the world, at least at some level, is willing to acknowledge the miraculous birth of Jesus, willing to acknowledge the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son? So naturally, that particular miracle, it's on people's minds. So my thought is, if it's on people's minds, then we should talk about it, should we not? Wouldn't that just be a natural thing to do? But I would also say, if we're going to talk about it, let's tell the whole story. And let's do so as completely and accurately as we possibly can. And in the process, I'll lead us right into our time in the Gospel of John that'll begin January the 1st in 2023. So John begins his gospel by saying in John chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, in what is referred to as the prologue, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The very deity of Jesus, the Word was God. Emmanuel, God with us. He is with us in the flesh. He is with us in the most personal, intimate way possible. So John goes on to say, he was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that light was the light of all mankind. The Word was God, the deity of Jesus. And so when Jesus came into this world in the most miraculous way possible, God was actually coming in the flesh. What an appropriate phrase. Emmanuel, God with us. So how did all of this start? These miraculous events, Jesus coming into the world, God coming into the world in the flesh, how did it all start? And of course, the short answer is, in the most miraculous way possible is how it began. So in Luke's gospel, in Luke chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commandments and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. So when Zechariah was serving at the temple on one particular occasion, an angel reveals to him that his wife Elizabeth is going to have a child. In the most miraculous way possible, she is going to have a child. And this child will become an adult with a very special mission in life. So Luke continues the story in verse 16. He will bring many of the people of Israel back to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. You would think that Zechariah would have responded with great enthusiasm at the announcement that his wife is going to be with child. They're going to have a child in this most miraculous way. And in verse 18, Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I'm an old man and my wife is well along in years." So the angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I've been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come at their appointed time." So God chooses to bring John the Baptist, as we will eventually become acquainted with him as we know him, into the world in a miraculous manner, and John will prepare the people for Emmanuel. So this announcement of the birth of John and the description of his mission sets in motion the plan for God to come and be in the flesh, for him to be Emmanuel. So this sudden announcement of John's birth sent a message to the people of that time. There has been some 400 years of prophetic silence. They've not heard a word from God in terms of prophetic word for 400 years. And suddenly, out of the blue, there's this announcement to Zechariah that in your well-advanced years, you and Elizabeth are going to have a child. And it not only sends a message to Zechariah and Elizabeth, it sends a message to all the people. God is active. God is powerful. And God is about to intervene in history. And so consequently, they have been given hope. They are experiencing hope in a way that they've never experienced hope before. And the truth is, it gives us hope as well, because we too worship a powerful God who is equally active in each of our lives. And we worship this same God who intervened in the lives of Zechariah and Elizabeth to set these important events in motion. That God who intervened in that context has the same power to intervene in each of our lives as well. So for these next 4 weeks, this is just the beginning point. We can tell this story of Emmanuel and how Jesus came to be God in the flesh and how he came to be with us in the most personal way possible. But as we reflect on this initial intervention, I believe that's a good phrase to use, an initial intervention. As we reflect on this initial intervention and how Zechariah and Elizabeth and the rest of the people experienced hope, what about you? In what ways do you feel particularly hopeless? In what ways are you experiencing, perhaps wondering if God is absent and you're not particularly experiencing his presence as a reality in your life at this moment? In what ways do you find yourselves deeply discouraged? Here's a thought. Here is a takeaway from the experience of this event, the wheels being set in motion. The principle is, we never know how or when or under what kind of circumstances that God will choose to intervene in a powerful way in each of our lives. We have no inkling how he may choose to do that, when he may choose to do that, or through what medium he may choose to do such intervention on our behalf through. God is all powerful and has the ability to intervene in our lives as well. I do believe, to Zechariah's credit, that he was probably taken a little off guard. And even though he and Elizabeth no doubt had desired to have a child all these years, when finally he said, "You're going to have a child," he said, I'm not so sure about this. And the angel most definitely got his attention, did he not? And so my question for you is, are you totally open, completely open to God intervening in your life in ways perhaps that you have never anticipated before? Emmanuel, God with us for the next 4 weeks. Let us be blessed during this time and sing our song of invitation.